Welcome back to the Blender Basics video tutorial series. This lesson will deal with Chapter 6, Lighting and Camera. My name is Jim Chronister, and the Blender Basics tutorial book can be downloaded from cdschools.org/cdhs. Look under Staff, My Name, it'll direct you to where you need to go. Let's start off with a brand new Blender scene, and let's look at some of the options that we have for lights and cameras today. If I select the camera that's on the screen, and we go and we look at our button settings under what can we do with the camera. There are a couple of different things that we can do with the camera, and some of them relate to actually working with a real camera. Perspective or orthographic. Right now when you hit F12, you are actually looking at it in a true perspective view, meaning that things are getting smaller as they get further away. If I were to hit orthographic on the camera and hit F12, then the camera is actually going to show up where lines going back are like an isometric projection drawing, where lines are parallel and they do not get smaller as they get further away. That can be useful sometimes depending on what you're trying to do. So we'll go back to perspective, which is a more natural camera view. Okay, what else can we do with the camera in here? Well, we can change our camera angle. Let's split my screen here and give myself a camera view up here in the top. So what can we do with the lens? Well, right now it's set to be a 35mm lens. If I change the lens angle, I can make it more like a close focus lens, or make it further away. So you have a lot of options in there for the lens. Shifting and clipping basically means pushing the camera to the left or the right of your view. Depth of field is a nice feature that we'll look at in a much later chapter, but you can actually blur things before and behind the object that you're actually focused on. And that one we would need to use with nodes, but it's a nice feature where you can simulate the f-stop on a real camera. And then what do you want to display? There are certain things that you can display, the size of the camera. Pass part out is what you see up here in this viewport, where we either fade out what's outside the camera view or make it darker. And sometimes that just helps with visualization, because a lot of beginning animation students don't realize that this is the outside line of what the camera really sees, and sometimes they think a lot of this area outside would be more. Let's also focus on lamps a little bit today too. And if I go to the lamp buttons, you have a lot of different types of lamps. You have a point light, a sun, a spotlight, a hemi, and an area. And a lot of these different lamps are discussed in the Blender book. If you'd like to take a look at those, or look in the Blender wiki at blender.org, or even look at a lot of other tutorials that are available. But again, there's a lot here that we can do. We're going to focus on some of the basics. A point light is a light that just shines equally in all directions. Energy, think of that like wattage of a light bulb. You can change the color of the light, how far the light shines in Blender units. So anything outside of 30 Blender units you wouldn't see. I see a lot of students make a really big scene. They'll stick a couple of lights in, and their scene isn't bright enough, so they think they need to add more lights, when really just playing with energy and distance usually take care of most of the problems. Most scenes can usually be developed with only about 2 or 3 lamps. But again, depending on the lighting and the effect that you're going for, you can add more to it. But again, if a light isn't shining far enough, it's not going to be very bright. Shadow. In old-fashioned Blender, without using ray tracing, and ray tracing is discussed in a later chapter, there was only one type of light that Blender could do that could cast a shadow, and that was a spot lamp. So when you look at a traditional spot lamp here, basically we're going to say, well, okay, how do we want this spot lamp to cast a shadow? Well, you can do a buffer shadow or a ray shadow. If I do a buffer shadow, you see a line going down through the middle of this thing. Well, the calculations for shadowing are occurring within the distance of that line. And again, the lamp has a distance how far it can shine. But then you also have this thing called clipping, clip start and end. So if I look at it, right here's your clipping, your starting and your end. And by changing these numbers, we'll actually make calculations for shadow either work better or work worse. So you usually want to keep that line pretty short to within the area where you really want to cast a shadow. You can do a lot of different things with lamps. You can actually put materials and textures on the lamp. You can change the color that the lamp is showing. You can actually put a movie on a lamp and have it project just like a movie theater lamp. So with all this discussed, you got a lot of different other lamps in here. An area lamp is basically a big square. That would be good for illuminating like a room where you want global lighting, like the whole ceiling would be lighting up the whole thing, and play again with your other settings on here. Every lamp can cast a ray shadow. Only one type of lamp can cast a buffer shadow. And anytime you can stay away from ray tracing, the better, because ray tracing eats up your memory, eats up your rendering times. A buffer shadow is much faster. So with that being said, let's start working on our lighthouse and our landscape scene. So we're going to go back to our original landscape scene. Here it is. We hit F12, we render a picture. This is where we left it with materials and textures on it. Let's merge the lighthouse with the landscape scene at this time. So let's get back out of here. In order to bring the lighthouse scene over, I need to go to the File and Append command. I'm going to append one Blender file into the other. Now you don't just bring the entire Blender file into this. Basically what you do is you actually bring in parts of the file that you want to bring in. So I find my lighthouse scene, and I usually go to object, because when you bring in an object, all the materials, all the textures, all the animations that are related to that object come over with it. So I'm going to click on all these different elements of my lighthouse. I'm not going to bring in the, hold down my shift key, select all these different elements. Don't bother bringing over the camera or the lamps, because we already have lamps and cameras in this scene. We go to append or link, and there's my lighthouse now in my scene. Now, I'm going to go to wireframe for a minute. While all those pieces are selected, I'm going to hit Control J to join them together. And now that is all one mesh again. And it didn't do it. Select it all again. I got some extra elements here. Control J should join them all together. And it did. Alright, let's get the lighthouse up onto the scene where I'd like it to go. So I'm going to hit number 1, go to a front view, grab the lighthouse, pull it up to where it should be sitting on the bank, scale it down. It's a little big. So right here's my current camera setting, and that looks pretty good. So let's look at it from the top view now, and let's move that lighthouse to a good location. I'm going to have it a little bit off center from the camera, sitting on the bank right about there. When I hit F12 and render a picture, here's what we have. So there's my lighthouse sitting on the bank. You can make it smaller, larger, whatever you'd like it to do. Okay, so my lighthouse is now in my scene. Now we're ready to put a lamp in the middle of this thing to have the light shining out. So get your 3D cursor, your little 3D bullseye with your left mouse button, directly in the spot of the lighthouse where the lamp should go. So in a front view, I'm going to click it in here. I'm going to look at it in a number 3, in a side view and a front view. Make sure it's all centered up. Look at it from the top view. It looks good. Hit number 1, switch back to a front view. Shift A, let's add a lamp, and let's add a spot lamp. And it's pointed down, so let's rotate it so it's pointed up towards the side. And that looks pretty good. Alright, let's look at it from top view. And I'm going to kind of rotate it so it's kind of pointed opposite of the camera, like 90 degrees to the camera. Okay, select the lamp again. First off, I hit F12. I'm probably not going to see too much right now because the light is not going to shine unless it's bouncing off of something first. So I don't really see a whole lot going on here yet. Okay, so what can we do to this light to make it more visible? Since this is going to be kind of a foggy night, I'm going to go back into my lamp settings. I'm going to look at some of my lamp settings in here. The energy and distance, I'll keep them where they're at for right now, but let's go down through here and see what else I can do with this thing. Okay, down under my spot shape, there's an option here for a halo. Let's turn on halo and keep the intensity at 1. And if I look at my sample up here, you're going to now see a cone forming. Let's hit F12, render a picture, and now you see an actual cone represents a light shining through like a foggy effect. If that were a lighthouse, that beam is way too wide, so let's escape out of that. Let's go back down here to where I turned on my halo effect. Spot shape, here's the degree angle. I'm going to take that halo beam down to about, about 10 degrees. That's a pretty intense beam. Hit F12, render a new picture. Okay, that looks pretty neat. Okay, and I could do some other things with that light, but I'm just going to kind of keep it the way it is right now. What else can I do? I could change the halo intensity here, making it more intense or less intense. Some things that I can also do, you'll notice that the there's a halo step in here. You can play with that stuff to change some of your settings with how your halo looks. Sometimes I like the softness of the edge. So the softness of the edge might be nice. That's something to do with shadows. Sampling would be nice. And again, the spotlight shape, softness of the spotlight edge. Let's blend that up a little bit. Hit F12 again. Just feel free to play around with some of these settings, and these settings are spelled out a little bit more in the book. So That looks pretty good, but there's one problem. There should be something here making it look like a light shining out of the lighthouse. Now you could go through and add your own little windows in here and your own little device in the middle. I'm going to do something very simple using a material setting called halo, also on the material, very similar to the halo that we're using on the lamp here. And I'm going to make an object within this lighthouse. First off, I'm going to keep my 3D bullseye right in the middle. I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'm going to add a mesh plane. There's my plane. I'm going to enter edit mode. I'm going to delete all but one vertice, so I'm going to right click holding down the shift key, select 3 vertices, hit delete, erase vertices. Then I'm going to right click the single little vertice left over here, G to grab it, I'm going to put it right in the middle of the lighthouse, and then go back to object mode. So what I've done now is I've made an object with one vertice. If I hit F12 and render, you don't see anything at all. Okay, so how can I improve that lighthouse effect? Well, this is a material setting. So I'm going to go over to materials, add a new material to this. You could give it a name called halo. I'm going to keep it kind of white right now. And I'm going to look at my options up here at the top where I can see halo. Now if you go to halo, you see a bunch of little dots. If I render a new picture now, you're going to see a little tiny fuzzy spot right there where that halo is showing up. Okay, well, I have some options down here. I have rings, lines, and stars. Let's turn them all on. Rings, lines, and stars, if I look at this from a simple plane, looks really nice. Let's hit F12 now again. And I should see a little glow right in the middle of the lighthouse now that could represent the light itself. You can play around with the color of the rings and the lines and the stars, the number of rings, lines, and stars, the size of this, the overall color, the diffuse color that you want to play around with. But again, it's another neat effect, and that finishes up our unit on lamps. Thanks for watching.